Hello, this is the Vietnam Social News Update for October 6, 2025. Date of news coverage, October 6, 2025. Politics Vietnam is witnessing a rare diplomatic overture at the top. Communist Party leader To Lem is scheduled to visit North Korea from October 9 to 11. This will be the first trip by a Vietnamese party chief to Pyongyang since 2007. And it coincides with North Korea's 80th anniversary parade for its ruling Workers' Party. The visit underscores Hanoi's interest in preserving ideological solidarity and reaffirming long-standing ties between the two socialist states. Accompanying Lem will likely be Defense Minister Phan Van Giang, signaling that security and military cooperation may figure in the agenda. Domestically, the ruling party continues its organizational reshaping. The previously announced administrative reform took effect on July 1st, eliminating the district, Huen, level, and merging many communes and provinces. The aim is to streamline governance, cut bureaucratic overlap, and improve resource allocation. But critics warn that it may further centralize power and weaken local accountability. In parallel, new directives are under consideration to give state security agencies increased authority to vet large investment projects, particularly in sectors like tourism or industry, raising concerns about political oversight over economic activity. In the background of these maneuvers lies a careful balancing act. While reaffirming ideological kinship with traditional socialist states, Vietnam is also signaling it will not retreat from its pragmatic diplomacy. The North Korea trip may carry more symbolic weight than trade or investment. After all, bilateral economic exchange with Pyongyang is negligible. But it helps communicate that Vietnam remains confident in engaging with both old and new partners. It also serves as a reminder to domestic and foreign audiences that the party retains ideological continuity, even as it modernizes. Economy. Now, let's move to the economy. Vietnam's third-quarter growth report delivered a surprise. GDP jumped by 8.22% year-on-year, outperforming expectations and accelerating from Q2's revised 7.96%. This marks the strongest quarterly growth since 2011, outside the post-COVID bounce. The performance is notable because it occurred amid mounting challenges, particularly U.S. tariffs of 20% imposed on Vietnamese exports from August 7th, which heavily hit footwear and textiles. Yet other sectors, electronics, chemicals, coffee, helped offset those losses. Trade figures remain robust. Total exports in Q3 rose by 18.4% year-on-year, with a trade surplus of $8.9 billion in that quarter. Over the first 9 months, Vietnam's trade turnover passed $680 billion, and the country recorded a surplus of $16.8 billion. Industrial output rose 9.1%, foreign direct investment jumped 8.5%, the strongest in 5 years, and tourism surged 21.5% as more global travelers returned. Inflation remains under control, with September's consumer price index up 3.38% year-on-year. Still, the outlook is not without risk. Typhoon Bua Loi inflicted estimated damage of 8 trillion dong, a $303 million, damaging or flooding nearly 170,000 homes, destroying over 34,000 hectares of crops, and disrupting infrastructure and power systems across northern central Vietnam. The central bank has urged lenders to restructure or freeze loans to firms affected by the storm. To sustain momentum, the central bank has declared that growth is a priority and is projecting credit expansion of 19 to 20% for 2025, while signaling caution toward exposure in high-risk sectors. Courts, analysts warn, will need to monitor non-performing loans carefully to prevent overheating or asset bubbles. In trade policy, the U.S. tariffs remain a looming threat. Some estimates suggest Vietnam could lose up to $25 billion in export revenue if new duties spread or persist. The government is responding with diplomacy. Officials are pursuing new trade partnerships beyond the U.S. market and pushing for more investment in high-value, innovation-driven industries to reduce reliance on labor-intensive exports. Meanwhile, plans to accelerate domestic housing construction aim to ease housing affordability pressures and stimulate domestic demand. Society and culture. Next, in society and culture, recovery from Typhoon Bualoy remains front and center in many affected communities. Rescue and relief operations continue as roads are cleared, power restored, and emergency supplies delivered. Many families remain displaced or unable to return home. Schools are still damaged or closed, and agricultural losses put pressure on rural incomes. The storm has renewed awareness of how vulnerable Vietnam's long coastline and interior regions remain to climate change and extreme weather. On the cultural front, Vietnam is stepping up its global narrative. At the Mondia Cult 2025 conference in Barcelona, Vietnam's culture minister proposed a decade of culture for sustainable development, calling for culture to drive innovation, climate awareness, and societal resilience. The plan outlines priorities ranging from protecting intangible heritage and promoting cultural rights to integrating artificial intelligence and digital media into cultural expression. Domestically, cultural diplomacy is being woven into soft power strategies. Vietnam Days events abroad, art and cuisine festivals, collaboration with UNESCO, and heritage tourism promotion are all being used more deliberately to project Vietnam's identity and to support the creative economy. Heritage cities like Hue, Hoi An, and Ha Long Bay are receiving renewed investment and attention, not just for tourism, but as anchors of local community development. The cultural sector is being treated as more than just image-making. It's now part of economic and strategic planning. International relations. Finally, in international relations, Vietnam is navigating an increasingly complex diplomatic landscape. The upcoming visit to North Korea by To Lum may appear to some as a throwback to Cold War-era solidarity, but it occurs at a moment when Vietnam is deliberately positioning itself as a flexible actor in a multipolar Asia. Vietnam's diplomatic playbook is now layered. Maintain ideological camaraderie with older allies, while expanding ties with new partners across the Indo-Pacific. Defense and energy links with Russia remain important, even as Vietnam seeks to manage exposure to Western sanctions. Leaked documents published recently revealed a covert mechanism through which Vietnam used returns from a joint oil venture to repay Russian military equipment credits, while bypassing international financial systems. These revelations deepen questions about how Hanoi will balance its long-standing military ties to Russia with increasing economic engagement with the U.S. and its allies. On the European front, Vietnam continues to diversify. French President Macron recently visited Southeast Asia, emphasizing France's role as a reliable partner in trade and security. In Hanoi, 14 cooperation agreements were signed in areas like aviation, defense, energy, and industry. Vietnam elevated its relationship with France to a comprehensive strategic partnership during the visit, a reflection of growing EU interest in Southeast Asia as a counterbalance to US and Chinese influence. In the Asia region, Vietnam maintains comprehensive strategic partnerships with major neighbors, China, Japan, South Korea, and is deepening ties across Southeast Asia. Its external diplomacy increasingly emphasizes trade, infrastructure, digital connectivity, climate cooperation, and security, rather than ideology alone. Vietnam's diplomatic posture today is fluid, adaptable, and multidimensional. Thank you for listening to the Vietnam Social News Update. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and see you again tomorrow. This news summary is based on publicly available reports and rewritten uniquely for Vietnam Social News. VietnamNews.com is the official web address of Vietnam Social News. We are an independent platform, not affiliated with Vietnam News Agency or any government-owned media outlet.